The compactor began to move while Daniel was still inside the refuse cage. A steel plate shuddered behind him, pressing a week's worth of office waste toward his knees. Crushed takeout containers, damp cartons, spoiled fruit from the executive dining room, and documents Felix Barrett had ordered shredded before the auditors arrived. The smell of fish chowder and industrial disinfectant sat thick in the afternoon heat. Above the cage, three employees leaned over the loading bay railing. "Trash boy," one of them called, laughing. "Your house is closing." Another lifted his phone to record. Daniel pushed both palms against the plate. It continued forward with the patience of machinery that had no reason to care what stood in its path. Miriam, the administrative manager, stood beside the control box, her lanyard tucked neatly beneath the collar of her cream blouse. She was peeling the label from a bottle of water in one unbroken strip. "There's somebody inside," Nicole Evans said. Miriam kept her thumb on the green button. "He knows why he went in." Before we continue our story, please take a moment to give a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Turn on the notification button for more interesting stories. Ma'am, sir, please give a like to the video and subscribe to our channel before we dive right back into our story together. Thank you so much for your kind gesture. Daniel's left shoe slid across a burst yogurt cup. His shoulder struck the cage wall. Somewhere beneath the garbage was the silver customs seal Felix had thrown down from the loading dock and ordered him to retrieve. The seal was worth less than the phones recording him. Without it, however, a refrigerated container waiting at Barbour's terminal called not be released. Felix had made that clear before tossing it into the waste. "You lose it," he had said. "You get in there and find it." Daniel bent low as the steel plate moved again. He reached beneath a flattened carton and found not the seal, but a small black temperature logger. Its casing cracked, its serial number scratched away. He closed his hand around it. "Nicole," he said, keeping his voice level. "Red switch, under the cover." She looked at the control box. Miriam's hand stopped peeling the label. "How does he know that?" one of the men above asked. Nicole slapped the red switch. The compactor stopped with the plate pressed against Daniel's thigh. For several seconds, nobody moved. The loading bay filled with the ticking of hot metal and the impatient horns of trucks crawling along Navigation Boulevard. Then Daniel pulled his leg free, found the customs seal wedged inside a bag of coffee grounds, and climbed out. His shirt was dark with liquid from the bins. A strip of onion skin clung to his wrist. Miriam held out her palm. He gave her the silver seal. The logger, too. He looked at the black device in his other hand. What logger? Her eyes remained on his fist. Nicole stepped between them and handed him a packet of tissues. It was a small movement, hardly brave, but it changed the temperature of the space. Miriam folded the bottle label into a square. "You people are confusing him," she said. "The boy is forgetting what belongs to him." Daniel wiped his face. The tissue came away brown. "My name is David." The employees above the railing laughed harder. Miriam's expression did not change. "Go wash up. Mr. Barrett needs his car cleaned before 5. Daniel walked toward the service corridor with the cracked logger hidden against his palm. Behind him, someone called, "Trash boy, don't forget the tires." He did not turn. For 23 days, no one at Meridian Axis Logistics had called him by the name printed on his temporary identification card. At first, it had been Office Boy, then Dumpster David. By the end of his first week, after Felice ordered him to carry 4 leaking garbage bags through the reception area during a client visit, the name settled into its permanent form. Trash Boy. People used it in emails. Trash Boy to move the chairs. Send Trash Boy to buy ice. Trash Boy should clean the driver's restroom. Nobody objected. Some employees avoided saying it, but answered when others did. A few spoke kindly when no manager was nearby. Most adjusted quickly, the way people adjusted to a backup generator, beginning its nightly roar or rainwater entering through a familiar part of the ceiling. Daniel had been sent to buy sanitary pads, hide an executive's empty whiskey bottles, wash a dog that did not belong to the company, stand in line for gasoline after a storm, and hold an umbrella over Felix while Felix completed a phone call. He had carried a photocopier down 2 flights because the elevator was reserved for senior staff. Miriam had once made him kneel in the reception area to scrape chewing gum from the floor while candidates waited for interviews. He kept count at first. On the 11th day, he stopped. In the basement restroom, he removed his shirt and rinsed it beneath the faucet. The cracked temperature logger sat on the porcelain sink beside his phone, which looked cheap because he kept it inside a chipped rubber case. The logger's screen was dead, but its memory chip might still work. He turned it over. Meridian Axis used the same model in vehicles carrying insulin, blood products, and laboratory reagents between the port of Houston, North Houston Baytown, and hospitals across the metropolitan area. If a refrigerated compartment rose above its permitted temperature, the logger recorded the excursion. A missing logger was an inconvenience. A logger with its serial number scratched away was a decision. The restroom door opened. Nicole entered without knocking, carrying a faded blue shirt from the supply cabinet. "You can't stay here," she said. Daniel looked at the sign on the door. "You're in the men's restroom." I noticed. She placed the shirt on the sink. One cuff bore the company's old logo, a compass inside a square. "Wear this?" Felix is already asking where his car key is. Daniel studied her through the mirror. Nicole worked in dispatch accounts, where she matched delivery notes to invoices and corrected the same spelling mistakes every month. She wore inexpensive glasses and removed them whenever she needed to say something difficult. She removed them now. "You should leave. I've left twice today. I mean the company." He ran water over the front of his shirt. "You said that last week. You weren't almost crushed last week. The plate had a pressure release. You knew about the emergency switch. It was red. It was under a locked cover." Daniel squeezed water from the shirt. Brown liquid spiraled toward the drain. Nicole lowered her voice. "What exactly are you doing here?" "My job. Your job is to clean a car with bottled water because Felix says tap water leaves spiritual marks." He said mineral deposits. He said spiritual marks first. Daniel smiled despite himself. Nicole did not. "People who need this kind of work do not read customs codes upside down," she said. "They do not correct root cost formulas when they're supposed to be buying breakfast tacos. They definitely do not know where the compactor's emergency stop is." He pulled on the blue shirt. The sleeves ended above his wrists. "Maybe I'm an unusually gifted errand boy. Maybe you're going to get someone else into trouble." That landed closer than she intended. She put her glasses back on quickly. Daniel picked up his phone. "Did you alter the March temperature reports?" Her face went still. The noise from the corridor seemed to move farther away. "What?" 3 vehicles showed the same internal temperature for 6 hours, same decimal, same intervals, even when one was parked in Baytown and another was crossing the Fred Hartman Bridge. "You clean cars now. Focus on your promotion." "The original files are missing." She reached for the door, then stopped. "You shouldn't ask questions you can't survive the answers to." "Can you?" Nicole looked at him for a long moment. Then she left the restroom without saying anything else. At 4:58, Daniel stood beside Felix's black Yukon Denali with a yellow cloth in one hand and the temperature logger taped beneath the waistband of his trousers. Felix emerged from the executive entrance while speaking into 2 phones. He was broad-shouldered, silver beginning at his temples, his tie loosened just enough to suggest that he worked harder than everyone else. Employees described him as the man who had kept Meridian Axis alive after the founder's illness. Felix described himself that way too, usually within the first 10 minutes of meeting Agnon Important. He finished one call and looked over the hood. "You missed a spot." Daniel wiped the place Felix indicated. Felix moved his finger 3 inches to the left. "There." Daniel wiped again. Felix's second phone rang. He rejected the call. "You know what your problem is, trash boy?" Daniel kept folding the cloth. "You think silence makes you dignified. It doesn't. A goat is also silent when it's tied behind a restaurant." A driver standing nearby laughed, then looked embarrassed by the sound. Felix opened the rear door and inspected the seat. "Tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Boardroom floor. Properly." "The cleaners come at 6. Felix glanced at him. "Did I ask about cleaners?" "No." "Good. Maybe the machine didn't press all the sense out of you." He entered the Yukon. As the vehicle pulled away, Daniel noticed a white envelope trapped beneath the rear tire. It had been crushed into the wet concrete. He waited until the security barrier lifted, then picked it up. The envelope carried the logo of Northlight Capital, the lender expected to refinance Meridian Axis's mounting debt. Inside was a single page Felix must have dropped. Conditions precedent to disbursement. Under operational integrity, one sentence had been underlined twice. No undisclosed product loss event within the preceding 12 months. Daniel folded the page and put it inside the small notebook he carried in his trouser pocket. He had bought the notebook at a convenience store in Midtown for $8. Its cover showed a cartoon rocket and the words, "Aim beyond limits." Miriam had laughed the first time she saw it. Look at Trash Boy writing his business plan. Inside, he had recorded dates, vehicle numbers, payroll deductions, staff names, missing documents, and every instance in which an employee had been ordered to perform work outside reasonable duties. He had also recorded the things that did not fit neatly into misconduct reports. The way employees lowered their voices when Felix walked past, how Miriam checked chairs after meetings and pushed each one into an exact line, how Nicole ate only half her lunch and wrapped the remainder for later, how two warehouse assistants stopped laughing whenever someone with a lanyard entered the room. There were pages about himself too. Day 5. Allowed humiliation to continue after sufficient pattern established. Day 9. Did not intervene when Marcus was forced to pay for director's damaged phone. Day 14. Extended observation period without board authorization. Day 20. Possible rationalization. Believing more evidence makes delay acceptable. He had not written beneath day 23. That night, from a small rented room in Montrose, Daniel called Walter Sloan, chairman of Meridian Axis's transition board. Walter answered on the fourth ring. "Tell me you're done." "I found a damaged temperature logger." There was silence. "Is there data?" "Possibly. You were sent to observe workplace conduct and verify the restructuring reports, not crawl into industrial equipment." "I didn't schedule the equipment." "You're making jokes now." Daniel placed the cracked logger beside his laptop. "I need another 48 hours. "No. Northlight's disbursement condition includes undisclosed product loss if Felix concealed an excursion, though. Then the auditors will find it." "The auditors are being given reconstructed files." Walter exhaled slowly. He had a way of doing it that made a telephone call feel like a disciplinary room. "The board approved this nonsense because you said employees would behave differently around a consultant. You said 5 days. They did behave differently. You stayed." "Yes. And now you're inside garbage machines." "Only one." "Daniel." He stopped moving. Walter used his real name only when he wanted the conversation to lose all softness. "You are chief executive of a company with 312 employees, 2 default notices, and enough cash for 6 weeks of payroll. You are not a private detective." "I know. No, you enjoy knowing. It's different." Daniel looked at the rocket on his notebook. The board had appointed him chief executive 11 days before he entered Meridian Axis, under the name David Adams. The announcement had been withheld while Northlight completed its refinancing review. Only the transition board, external counsel, and 2 senior lenders knew that the 24-year-old founder of a small route optimization company had been selected to lead the rescue. Felix believed the board was still interviewing candidates. Most employees had never seen Daniel's photograph. His technology company had served other businesses, rather than the public, and he had spent 4 years avoiding conferences, magazine profiles, and every request to be photographed beside a rented, luxury car. Anonymity had seemed useful. It had also become a place to hide. 48 hours, Daniel said. Walter did not answer immediately. "You sound like your father when he had already decided and wanted permission afterward." "That's not an argument. It's not praise either." The line went quiet again. "Tomorrow afternoon," Walter said. "Northlight's team will be in the building. You do not reveal yourself unless there is immediate risk. You do not provoke Felix. You do not collect another bruise as evidence. At 5 o'clock, you leave. Understood?" "Yes." "Say the whole thing." "At 5 o'clock, I leave." Daniel ended the call and connected the temperature logger to his laptop. The device appeared as an unnamed drive. Inside were 14 files, 13 were corrupted. The last one opened. A graph climbed sharply at 2:17 a.m. and remained above the permitted range for 9 hours. The shipment identification had been partly erased, but 3 characters remained. R7K. Daniel checked the copies in his notebook. Vehicle R7K had delivered pediatric insulin to 4 private hospitals and a county clinic 8 months earlier. The official report showed no excursion. Before we continue our story, please take a moment to give a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell for more interesting stories. Ma'am, sir, please give a like to the video and subscribe to our channel before we dive right back into our story together. Watch till the end and let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What would you have done if it were you? Thank you so much for your kind gesture. The following morning, Miriam placed a cardboard box on Daniel's desk, which was actually a plastic stool beside the stationery cupboard. Take this upstairs. What is it? Your degree. The box was heavy. Red tape crossed its lid. Where? Boardroom. He lifted it. Miriam did not release her side. You're becoming curious, she said. Curiosity is expensive when you're poor. So is silence. Her fingers tightened on the cardboard. For a moment, something moved behind her eyes. Not fear exactly, recognition. Then she let go. Do not become clever with me. Daniel carried the box upstairs. The executive floor smelled of air conditioning and newly cut flowers. Northlight Capital had sent 3 representatives in dark suits. Junior staff hurried between rooms with bottled water, printed presentations, and extension cords. Felix stood near the boardroom windows, directing everyone with 2 fingers. Trash boy! Every conversation paused. Felix pointed to the floor beside the presentation screen. Put it there. Daniel lowered the box. Open it. Inside were damaged temperature loggers, their serial numbers scratched away. At least 20 of them. Felix watched his face. Problem? No. Good. Take them to the loading bay. Miriam stood near the door, aligning the water bottles so their labels faced outward. Felix handed Daniel a printed disposal form. Sign. Daniel read it. The form declared that the devices had been destroyed by water during a basement flood 2 years earlier. It listed David Adams, temporary office support, as the employee who had discovered them that morning. He looked at Felix. I didn't discover these. You're looking at them now. The form says 2 years ago. Then imagine you were more punctual. One of the Northlight representatives glanced over. Felix smiled toward him, an easy executive smile, then lowered his voice. Sign the form. No. Miriam stopped adjusting the bottles. Felix's expression hardly changed. Come outside. Daniel remained where he was. I said come outside. Nicole entered carrying a folder of delivery summaries. She saw the open box and nearly dropped the folder. Felix saw that too. The room had become quiet enough for the projector fan to sound loud. Nicole, Felix said, you recognize these? No, he smiled. That answer came quickly. I have work. Apparently everyone has work except the person employed to carry garbage. Felix turned back to Daniel. Take the box. Daniel lifted it, but instead of walking toward the service stairs, he placed it on the boardroom table. The impact made several water bottles tremble. I will not destroy operational records. Felix's smile vanished. The Northlight representatives looked up fully now. Miriam moved toward the door and closed it. Felix spoke softly. You think because visitors are here, you've acquired rights? They weren't destroyed in a flood. And you know this because? Daniel did not answer. Felix walked around the table. Search him. Miriam stared at him. Search him, Felix repeated. I'm not security. Your administration. Administer. Nobody laughed. Daniel stepped back when Miriam approached. You can't search me. Felix raised his voice for the benefit of the room. A company asset disappeared yesterday. This temporary worker was found inside the disposal area. He is now refusing lawful instructions and handling confidential equipment. One of the Northlight representatives stood. Perhaps this should happen somewhere else. Felix nodded apologetically. Of course. Unfortunately, theft rarely respects meeting schedules. He reached for Daniel's trouser pocket. Daniel caught his wrist. It was the first time he had touched Felix except to hand him something. Felix looked down at Daniel's hand, then up at his face. There you are, he said quietly. 2 security guards entered after Miriam opened the door. Felix pulled free. Take him downstairs. Nicole stepped forward. He didn't steal anything. Felix turned. Did I ask? No. Then protect your salary. She looked at the damaged loggers, then at Daniel. He didn't steal them. she said again. Felix's face changed, not into anger, but calculation. Bring her too. The guards led them toward the main office floor. Employees began rising from their desks as the group passed. Phones appeared. By the time they reached reception, half the company had gathered behind the glass partitions. Felix enjoyed an audience when he believed he controlled the ending. He instructed one guard to empty Daniel's pockets onto the reception desk. A wallet, 2 keys, the Rocket notebook, a cheap phone, a folded Northlight page, 3 cable ties, a small brass key, no logger. Felix picked up the notebook. Daniel moved toward him, and a guard shoved him back. Felix opened to the first page. His eyes moved quickly across the entries. The room seemed to narrow. What is this? Daniel said nothing. Felix turned several pages. Staff names, dates, vehicle numbers, instructions given by managers, payroll irregularities. Miriam came close enough to read over his shoulder. Her mouth parted slightly when she found her own name. Felix held up the notebook. Our trash boy has been writing stories. Nobody responded. He opened another page. Day 16. Mr. Barrett instructed temporary employee to wash dog in staff kitchen. Dog urinated near food storage. A nervous sound travelled through the crowd. Felix smiled without humour. Day 18. Miss Owens required warehouse assistant to stand outside in rain for lateness while senior manager arrived 40 minutes after scheduled time. Miriam reached for the book. Felix moved it away. Very detailed. He looked at Daniel. Who sent you? No one you can intimidate. Felix crossed the space between them and struck him. The slap was not theatrical. It was quick and flat, almost administrative. Daniel's cheek turned toward the glass entrance doors. Someone inhaled sharply. Felix seemed surprised by his own hand. Then the surprise disappeared. Search his clothes properly. One guard hesitated. Sir, properly. Daniel looked at the employees surrounding them. Some stared at the floor, others watched with the concentration people gave, to an accident they would later insist they had tried to prevent. Nicole pushed past the guard and stood beside him. If you remove his clothes, remove mine too. Felix laughed once. Don't be stupid. I changed the files. The room went still. Daniel turned toward her. Nicole's hands shook, so she held the folder against her chest. The March temperature files, she said, and August. I changed them. Felix's voice softened. Nicole, you're confused. No. You've been under pressure. You told me to copy stable readings from Route 4. Felix took one step toward her. She stepped back, but continued. You said the shipments had already been delivered, and reporting the excursions would only create panic. You said Northlight would cancel the refinancing and everyone would lose their jobs. That is not what happened. You stood behind my chair while I did it. Felix looked around the reception area. He appeared less embarrassed than betrayed. Do you know how many salaries were paid because I kept this company standing? He asked. Do you know what happens when lenders smell one mistake? They don't investigate, they leave. One child was hospitalized, Nicole said. The words did not seem to belong to the noisy office. Daniel watched Felix carefully. Felix's eyes moved once toward the box of damaged loggers upstairs, then back. Nicole swallowed. The clinic sent a complaint after the August delivery. The insulin was warm when they opened the package. A child was admitted that night. They couldn't prove the product caused it. Miriam sat down on the edge of the reception desk. Felix spoke through his teeth. You don't know what you're saying. I know you deducted the replacement cost from the drivers and buried the complaint. Felix pointed at Daniel. And what did he promise you? Nothing. Money? Promotion? He didn't even tell me his real name. Felix looked at him. The room waited. Daniel could have ended it there. His appointment letter was stored in the encrypted folder on his phone. Walter and the transition board were already upstairs in a private meeting room, waiting for 5 o'clock. One call would bring them down. Instead, Daniel looked at Nicole. Why did you alter the reports? She stared at him as though the question were an insult. You know why. I need you to say it. My father's pension stopped. My younger brothers were still in school. I'd been unemployed for 9 months before this job. She removed her glasses, wiped them with the edge of her blouse and made the lenses worse. Felix said if the lender withdrew, 300 people would go home. Because I wanted to be morally clean. Felix spread his hands toward the employees. She understood the stakes. No, Nicole said. I understood my rent. That quieted him more effectively than shouting could have. Daniel picked up his notebook from the desk. Felix tried to take it back, but the security guard shifted between them. The guard had made his decision late. Late decisions still changed rooms. Felix pointed toward the entrance. You're dismissed. Both of you. Miriam looked up. Felix? Prepare the letters. You can't dismiss her like this. I just did. He turned to Daniel. As for you, I don't care whether a competitor sent you, a blogger sent you, or God himself sent you. You entered this company under false pretenses, stole confidential information, and disrupted a financing meeting. Get out. Daniel gathered his keys and phone. He left the cable ties on the desk. Give me the temporary card, Miriam said. He unclipped it from his shirt. The card displayed the name David Adams beneath a photograph taken at the security gate. Miriam cut it in half with scissors from the reception drawer. There, Felix said, trash disposed. A few people looked away. Daniel put the broken pieces of the card beside his notebook. Then the elevator doors opened. Walter Sloan stepped out with two board members and Meridian Axis's external counsel. They had heard enough from the floor above to abandon the meeting. Walter's dark grey suit looked almost colourless beneath the reception lights. Felix rearranged his face at once. Chairman, there's been an incident involving a temporary worker. I can see that. He infiltrated the company and stole operational information. I have terminated him. Walter looked at the cut identification card. Did he receive his final pay? Felix blinked. We'll process it. Then the termination is incomplete. This is a serious security matter. So is putting a human being inside an active compactor. The employees began looking at one another. Felix's eyes moved to Daniel, then back to Walter. You know him? Walter did not answer. Daniel unlocked his phone and opened the appointment letter. He placed the screen on the reception desk. Felix read the first lines. Miriam rose slowly. The document carried the signatures of every transition board member. Appointment of Group Chief Executive, Daniel Avery. Effective date, 11 days earlier. Felix read it twice. No. The word escaped him before he could control it. Daniel removed the cheap rubber case from his phone. Beneath it was the black Meridian Axis executive credential sent by the board before his assignment began. The compass logo caught the overhead light. Someone in the crowd whispered, Jesus? Miriam looked at the pieces of temporary identification she had just cut apart. Felix straightened. If this is a joke, it isn't, Walter said. You appointed a 24-year-old boy to run this company. Walter's eyebrows lifted. You seemed comfortable calling him a boy 5 minutes ago. Felix turned toward Daniel. The change in his posture was almost invisible. His shoulders lowered. His voice became careful. Mr. Avery, whatever occurred here has been taken out of context. Daniel looked at the cardboard box of damaged loggers being carried down by one of the board members. What context improves it? Felix glanced at the employees. This company has been in crisis for 18 months. Staff discipline collapsed, clients were leaving, drivers were stealing fuel. Half the people in this room expect salaries from money they don't generate. Several employees lowered their eyes. Felix saw it and gained strength. I made decisions. Hard decisions. Some may look unpleasant to someone who has spent 3 weeks playing errand boy, but leadership is not a college debate. You struck an employee. I believed you had stolen confidential material. You put me inside a compactor. I didn't activate it. Miriam's head lifted. Felix looked at her. She began peeling the label from another water bottle. Her thumb tore the strip halfway. You told me to keep the button down, she said. Felix's face hardened. You were responsible for the loading bay. Yes. You could have refused. Miriam stared at the torn label. The employees were watching her now, and she disliked being watched more than she feared Felix. Daniel had noticed that during his second week. She controlled rooms, so they would never have the opportunity to examine her. I could have, she said. It was not an apology. It was something less comfortable. Walter asked counsel to secure the documents and suspend Felix and Miriam pending investigation. Daniel stopped him. Not yet. Walter's expression warned him to choose his next words carefully. Daniel opened the graph from the cracked logger and placed the phone on the desk. This shipment was never reported. The external counsel studied the screen. Felix did not need to approach. He recognized it from where he stood. Daniel looked at him. How many? Felix remained silent. How many temperature excursions were concealed? Not every excursion damages a product. How many? Do you want a number, or do you want the company to survive? The employees shifted. Felix pointed toward the Northlight representatives who had entered the reception area behind the board. The refinancing closes today. If Northlight sees an undisclosed loss event, they walk. Without the facility, payroll stops before the end of next month. Fuel suppliers freeze our accounts. Hospitals lose delivery routes. 312 people become unemployed because the new chief executive wants to prove he has clean hands. Daniel looked at the faces around him. He recognized the cleaner whose commuter stipend had been withheld after her child fell ill, the dispatcher who sent half his salary home to relatives in Beaumont, the guard who had finally stepped between Felix and the notebook. People he knew only because they had spoken freely around someone they believed did not matter. Nicole stood beside the reception desk, holding her dismissal letter before Miriam had even printed it. Felix saw Daniel looking. "This is leadership," he said. "Not the garbage. This moment. You can report the excursions, lose the funding, and explain morality to hungry families. Or you can correct the system quietly and keep the doors open." Walter spoke. "Don't answer him here." "Why not?" Felix asked. He wanted the truth of the company. Let him meet it. Daniel's phone vibrated. An incoming dispatch alert filled the screen. Vehicle R12 had left the North Houston cold storage facility 40 minutes earlier, carrying oncology medication and blood clotting factors. The temperature sensor had stopped transmitting before departure. The dispatch had been approved manually, by Nicole's credentials. She stared at the alert. "I didn't approve that." Felix looked toward the elevator. Miriam's face changed. Daniel understood before anyone spoke. The unstable unit had not been repaired. Felix had sent another shipment out, while Northlight was in the building, using Nicole's login so the route would appear normal. "Where is the vehicle?" Daniel asked. Nobody answered. He grabbed the desk phone and called dispatch. The driver was already approaching Midtown. Daniel ordered him to pull into the nearest secure freight yard, shut the refrigeration unit, and wait for a replacement vehicle. Felix seized the receiver. "You stop that truck and the hospitals receive nothing tonight." Daniel took it back. "If the temperature is compromised, they receive nothing now." "You don't know that. That's why it stops." Felix lowered his voice. "Northlight is listening." "I know." The driver confirmed the instruction and ended the call. One of the Northlight representatives closed her folder. There was no drama in the movement, no announcement. She simply closed it, and everyone understood what had changed. Daniel turned to her. "Meridian Axis has undisclosed temperature excursions and manipulated records. The board will provide the complete files. Today's disbursement should not proceed." Walter said his name under his breath. Felix laughed, once, in disbelief. "You've killed it." "Maybe." "Not maybe." The representative asked for access to the relevant systems. Council began arranging it. Around them, employees whispered. Someone started crying near the accounts department, quietly and with obvious embarrassment. A warehouse supervisor sat down on the floor because there were no chairs close enough. Daniel looked at Nicole. "Your access is suspended during the investigation." She nodded as if she had expected nothing else. "You should take the phone too," she said. He took the company phone she offered. Felix watched them. "That's your justice?" he asked. "She tells you the truth and you punish her." "She altered safety records." "Because I told her." "She still did it." Nicole flinched, though Daniel had spoken gently. Felix smiled with tired satisfaction. "There, you see, clean hands." Daniel looked at the rocket notebook, the cut identity card, and the pieces of Felix's empire spread across the reception desk. "No," he said, "mine aren't clean." Walter's eyes narrowed. Daniel turned toward the employers. "I entered this company under a false name. The board authorized 5 days of observation. I stayed 23. A murmur moved through the room. I believed people would reveal the truth around someone they considered powerless. They did. I also watched things I could have stopped earlier because I wanted more proof. Miriam looked at him for the first time without contempt or caution. You let us do it, she said. Yes. You wanted to see how far it would go. The question struck harder than Felix's hand. Daniel did not look away. Yes. Walter stepped forward. This isn't the place. It is exactly the place, Miriam said. Her bottle label had torn into small wet pieces between her fingers. You had the power to stop it every day. Yes. And you waited until they poured garbage on you? Yes. Something in her face collapsed, then rebuilt itself. She nodded once. Then you're not better than him yet. Walter ordered the office closed for the remainder of the day. No one obeyed at first. Employees stood among desks and half-finished tasks, uncertain whether they still had jobs, whether they should collect their belongings, or continue answering emails. Finally, computers began shutting down one by one. Felix was escorted to his office to surrender his devices. He did not resist. On the way to the elevator, he paused beside Daniel. You'll learn, he said. Companies don't die from cruelty. They die from honesty at the wrong time. Daniel looked toward the Northlight representatives carrying their closed folders. Maybe they'd from both. Felix's mouth moved as though he had another answer. He decided against it and entered the elevator. By evening, the lender had formally paused the refinancing. Within 3 days, fuel suppliers demanded cash. 2 hospital networks suspended new routes. The board disclosed the temperature incidents to regulators and began a product recall that reached warehouses in Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. No death was conclusively linked to the compromised shipments. That did not make the reports easier to read. The clinic complaint Nicole had mentioned contained a photograph of a refrigerator shelf and a handwritten note from a nurse. Packs warm on arrival. Driver said traffic delayed him. Please advise. No one had advised. Felix was dismissed after the investigation found 7 concealed excursions, false disposal reports, and unauthorized deductions from driver's pay. He continued to insist that every decision had been made to preserve the company. His lawyers advised him not to speak publicly, which did not prevent him from sending lengthy messages to former colleagues at 2 in the morning. Miriam was dismissed too. During her final interview, she did not ask for forgiveness. She explained each instruction she had followed and each one she had invented herself. The distinction mattered to her. When Daniel asked why she had humiliated employees who had done nothing wrong, she adjusted the chair opposite him until its legs aligned with the floor tiles. People listen to the person who can embarrass them, she said. Did that work? For a while. And after, they waited for me to fail. She pushed the chair in and left without shaking his hand. Nicole received no immediate protection. She had altered regulated records and used another employee's login twice before Felix began using hers. The board placed her on unpaid suspension, while external investigators reviewed her role. Daniel argued that her cooperation should matter. Walter agreed. Neither man claimed it should erase what she had done. Meridian Axis entered Chapter 11 restructuring 6 weeks later. The company did not disappear in one clean motion. It became smaller by announcements. The executive dining room closed first. Then the Dallas expansion was cancelled. Trucks were parked in rows at the Port of Houston yard and marked with white paint according to whether they would be sold, repaired, or retained. Employees received letters in batches. 109 positions survived under a court-supervised operating unit. 203 did not. Every retained salary came attached to somebody else's departure. The board also reviewed Daniel's undercover operation. Walter's report used phrases such as serious lapse of judgment, avoidable personal risk, an unauthorized extension of investigative activity. Daniel remained chief executive during the restructuring but lost the broad authority promised in his original appointment. Every major operational decision required a restructuring officer's approval. He had exposed the truth and made himself less trusted by the people who had hired him to find it. On a humid Monday morning, he returned to the old headquarters to clear the temporary staff cupboard before the building was handed back to the landlord. The reception sign had been removed. Pale rectangles remained where the Meridian Axis letters had protected the wall from dust. Most of the chairs were gone. His plastic stool still stood beside the stationery cupboard. On it sat the company mug with the cracked compass logo. Someone had written Trash Boy across the side in permanent marker. Daniel picked it up. The handle had been repaired with copper wire. He turned when he heard footsteps. Nicole stood near the glass doors carrying a brown envelope. Her suspension had ended that morning. The investigators recommended a reduced sanction because of her cooperation, but the operating unit had no position to offer her. She looked at the mug. You kept that? I thought you repaired it. I did. Why? You kept drinking coffee from the broken side and pouring it on your shirt. That happened once. 4 times. He ran his thumb over the wire. Nicole placed the envelope on the empty reception desk. My final letter. I heard. You're the chief executive. You should hear things. He accepted the correction. Outside, workers loaded filing cabinets into a truck. One cabinet would not fit through the entrance until they removed a drawer. The men argued about the angle, pushed it back, then tried again. Nicole watched them for a moment. What will happen to the retained routes? Another operator takes control next month. And you? I stay until the transfer is complete. Then? The board hasn't decided. She nodded. He could not tell whether that answer pleased her. After a while, she pointed to the mug. Are you going to remove the writing? Daniel looked at the black letters. They had faded where hands had repeatedly touched them. No. That sounds symbolic. It's permanent marker. She almost smiled. He placed the 2 pieces of his old temporary identification card inside the mug. The photograph on one half no longer matched the name on the other. Nicole reached for the glass door, then paused. I never asked, she said. Asked what? Your name. Your actual name. Not from the letter. He held the mug beneath one arm and picked up the plastic stool. Daniel. She repeated it once, quietly, checking the shape of it. Then she pushed the door open and held it while he carried the stool outside. I know you enjoyed the story, but guess what? More are yet to come. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories, turn on notifications bell so you never miss a new story. Also, comment your thoughts about the story. Share with loved ones and friends so they too can enjoy the story as well. Every story has a meaning, and every voice deserves to be heard. If you enjoy powerful storytelling, emotional journeys, and unforgettable narratives, make sure you subscribe to The Narrative and become part of our growing community. Thank you.